I used to think freedom was the simplest thing in the world, a door you could just walk through. But that was before I learned what it really costs to be free. My name is Daniel Cross, 36 years old. Once a marketing manager, now just another man who lost everything. A single wrong decision, one misplaced email, and my whole career crumbled overnight. They called it insider trading. I called it a setup, but the law didn't care. When I finally got out of prison, I had nothing, no job, no family, no home. Just a record that followed me like a shadow. For 6 months, I drifted through shelters, offering to work odd jobs just to earn a meal. Every time I introduced myself, people recognized my name, the man who once had it all, now begging for scraps. Then, one cold evening, a woman appeared at the shelter door. She didn't belong there. Perfect posture, long dark coat, and eyes sharp enough to slice through the smoke and despair of that place. Her name was Evelyn Marlowe. She was rich, too rich. The kind of person you'd only see in glossy magazines or on the other side of a limousine window. She didn't look at anyone else. Just me. "You're Daniel Cross," she said calmly. "The one who took the fall for the Denevoir Corporation scandal." I froze. No one had said that name in years. "I didn't take the fall," I muttered. "I was forced into it." Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Exactly." Before I could ask what she meant, she continued, "I can offer you freedom, real freedom. No debts, no record, no past. In exchange, I'll expect something from you." It sounded absurd. Too good. "What's the catch?" I asked. She leaned closer. "You'll belong to me." For a moment, I thought she was joking. But her tone didn't change. Her eyes were steady, emotionless. I laughed weakly. "You mean like work for you?" She shook her head. "No, Daniel. I mean belong to me. Entirely." The shelter went silent. I felt the cold creep up my spine. "I think you've got the wrong person," I said quietly. She stepped closer, her perfume soft and intoxicating. "You said you wanted a second chance. I'm offering it. But freedom isn't free. Someone always pays for it." Then she handed me a card, black, embossed with her name and a single address. "If you change your mind," she said, "come to this place tomorrow by midnight." After that, the offer disappears. And just like that, she was gone. The next 24 hours were torture. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The words "you'll belong to me" kept echoing in my head. By midnight the next night, I was standing in front of her mansion. It was nothing like I'd ever seen, a sprawling estate on the edge of the city, lit by silver lanterns that flickered against marble walls. The gate opened on its own as I approached. Inside, a man in a suit too polished to be real led me through corridors lined with mirrors. My reflection followed me like it was watching, not copying. Finally, I stood before Evelyn again. She was seated at a long table, dressed in white silk, sipping wine as if she'd been expecting me all along. "I thought you wouldn't come," she said softly. "I shouldn't have," I admitted. "But I've got nowhere else to go." Her smile returned, small, but satisfied. "Then you made the right choice." She slid a contract across the table. "You'll stay here. You'll have food, clothes, and peace. In return, you'll do as I say, without question." I stared at the papers. There were pages of fine print, but one line stood out, bold and simple. "The subject agrees to total obedience to the benefactor for the term of personal restoration." "What does that even mean?" I asked. Evelyn looked up, her eyes glinting. "It means I'll rebuild you from the outside in." I hesitated. "And if I refuse?" She smiled again. "Then I'll simply find someone else. Someone more willing to be free." The wind outside howled through the open windows. I thought of the shelter, the hunger, the endless humiliation. Then I took the pen and signed. Evelyn's smile widened, not cruel, but victorious. "Good," she said softly. "Then let's begin." She stood, her presence filling the room. "From this moment on, Daniel Cross no longer exists. I'll give you a new name, a new role, a new life." I swallowed hard. "What name?" Her eyes gleamed like polished steel. "Danielle," she whispered. My wife. The pen slipped from my hand. You're what? You wanted freedom, she said, stepping closer. This is what it looks like. You're no longer hunted, no longer broken. You're mine, and I'll make sure the world believes you were always meant to be by my side. I backed away. This is insane. She tilted her head, calm and chilling.
No, Daniel.
This is rebirth. The last thing I remember before the lights dimmed was her hand brushing my cheek, gentle, almost tender, and her whispering, "By morning you'll thank me." When I woke up, the bed was soft, the air perfumed, and my reflection in the mirror across the room wasn't mine. It smiled first. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't natural silence, not the kind you find in peaceful places, but something heavy, controlled. Like the walls themselves were listening. The room was too bright, too perfect. The sheets were white satin, the walls painted soft gold, and the scent of lavender hung in the air. Someone had dressed me in silk sleepwear far softer and lighter than anything I'd ever worn. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My head ached, and my memory blurred around the edges. The last thing I remembered was signing that contract, and Evelyn whispering, "By morning, you'll thank me." Then I saw at the mirror across the room. A woman stared back at me. I froze. She looked familiar in an eerie way, like someone I could have known long ago. Soft skin, full lips, eyes too bright to be mine. Her hair was longer, her features smoother, delicate. I blinked hard.
So did she.
But when I lifted my hand, she lifted hers a moment too late. It was me. And yet it wasn't. I stumbled from the bed, gripping the frame as panic rose in my throat. "What did you do to me?" I shouted. The door opened. Evelyn entered calm, graceful, wearing a flowing robe that shimmered like moonlight. "I see you're awake," she said softly. "Good. The first stage went beautifully." "What did you do?" I demanded. "What's happening to me?" She approached, her expression unreadable. "I told you I'd rebuild you. The body can be reshaped. The mind, refined. You're no longer Daniel Cross, the man who was crushed by a world that refused to forgive him." I shook my head. No, this isn't real."
This isn't me.
Evelyn tilted her head slightly, eyes glinting with something almost like pity. "It's more real than the version of you that was dying on those streets." I didn't agree to this. She smiled faintly. "You signed your freedom to me, and I promised you a new life. That's what I'm giving you, one no one can ever take away." I stumbled toward the mirror, touching my face. The skin felt warm, soft, different. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Her hand brushed my shoulder lightly. "Because I need you. Because I've waited years for someone who could understand what it means to be both saved and owned. You belong to me now, Danielle." The name rolled off her tongue like silk, and something inside me tightened a shiver that wasn't entirely fear. "I'm not her," I said weakly. "I'm not,
Danielle."
She smiled. "Not yet." For the next few days, I lived in confusion and silence. Every mirror, every reflection seemed to show her more than me. Evelyn kept me in that room, sending attendants who spoke in whispers, who called me Madam without hesitation. They brought me meals I didn't ask for, clothes I didn't want, gowns of velvet and lace. The first time they laid one out on the bed, I refused to touch it. By evening, it was gone and replaced by something even softer, even more delicate. On the third day, Evelyn returned. "You haven't eaten properly," she said. "Or dressed. Do you want to make this harder for yourself? I want my life back." Her voice softened, dangerously calm. "That life is gone. The world buried you. This house is the only place you exist now." She motioned to the dress on the bed, pale blue, like the morning sky. "Put it on," she said simply.
No.
She exhaled slowly. "Daniel. My name is Daniel." Her eyes darkened. "Not anymore." She moved closer, too close, and placed a small silver key in my hand. "You can walk out that door if you want. But the moment you do, everything vanishes, the house, your name, your record. You'll be nothing again. Forgotten. Hungry. Hunted. I stared at the key. It felt heavier than metal, like it carried the weight of every choice I'd ever made. "And if I stay?" I whispered. She smiled gently. "Then I'll show you who you were always meant to be." The clock ticked. My heartbeat filled the silence. I set the key down.
Slowly.
Evelyn's eyes softened with quiet satisfaction. "Good girl," she whispered. Something in me broke, or maybe began to bend. That night, I stood before the mirror again. My hands trembled as I lifted the blue gown from the bed. The fabric shimmered between my fingers. When I finally slipped it on, the sensation was strange.
Not wrong.
Just foreign. The silk hugged my frame as though it already knew the shape I was supposed to have. I caught my reflection. For a moment, I didn't see a prisoner or a ruined man. I saw someone lighter.
Softer.
Almost free. Then Evelyn appeared behind me in the mirror, her hands resting gently on my shoulders. "Beautiful," she whispered. "Now you look like someone worth saving." Her perfume filled the air, warm, hypnotic. I met her eyes in the reflection, my breath shallow. "This isn't freedom," I said weakly. "Of course it is," she replied. "It's just a different kind." She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "And once you understand that, you'll never want to go back." The next morning, I woke to find the door unlocked and a single note waiting on the dresser. "Meet me downstairs, my wife. Your new life begins today." I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I couldn't remember what my old face looked like. When I walked downstairs that morning, I expected to see the same lavish emptiness I'd seen before: gold-framed mirrors, soft carpets, too much silence. But this time, the house was alive. Soft music played from somewhere unseen. The smell of fresh flowers filled the halls. Every door that had once been locked was now open, as if Evelyn wanted me to explore. I moved slowly, unsure whether I was free or being tested. When I reached the dining room, Evelyn was already waiting. She stood by the tall window, sunlight bathing her in a halo of gold. She wasn't wearing white this time, but a deep crimson gown that almost seemed to glow against her skin. Her eyes met mine immediately. "Good morning, Danielle." The name hit me again, strange, heavy. "Please," I said softly. "Don't call me that." Her lips curved faintly. "But that's who you are now." I didn't reply. My throat tightened. She motioned toward the table. "Sit." I obeyed, without realizing it. The chair creaked slightly as I sat down. Evelyn's tone was calm, steady, the kind of voice that seemed to bend the air around her. "I know this is difficult, but every rebirth is. You're resisting because you're still clinging to the illusion of who you were." I stared at the plate in front of me: eggs, fruit, tea, all arranged with precision. "You changed me without my permission," I said quietly. "You took my face, my body." "I gave you a body that fits," she interrupted, still soft but firm. "You're not a victim here, Danielle. You're an opportunity. For both of us." I clenched my fists. "You think you own me?" Her eyes didn't waver.
No.
"I think I know you. Better than you ever did." The silence between us stretched until I couldn't breathe. Then she said something that froze me completely. "Would you like to see him?" "See who?" I asked. "Daniel Cross," she said. "The man you used to be." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Without answering, she led me through a side door into a small study. The air was cooler there, and in the center stood a tall mirror framed in dark wood. But this one wasn't like the others. Its surface shimmered faintly, like liquid. Evelyn touched its edge. "Look." At first, all I saw was my reflection, the woman I'd become. Then the surface rippled, and another image bled through. A man appeared, rough, tired, unshaven, the version of me that had been left behind. Daniel Cross. He looked lost, empty. Evelyn's voice broke the silence. "He's still out there, trapped in what's left of his old life. Alone. Forgotten. You can go back to him if you want, but you'll lose everything, even me." My chest tightened. "This isn't real." She smiled faintly. "Reality is just the place we agree to stay. I gave you a better one." Her hand brushed mine.
Warm. Real.
I didn't save you to keep you prisoner, she said. I saved you to make you seen. I stared at her hand on mine the way her touch made the confusion blur for just a second. How long have you been planning this? I whispered. Her lips curved into something between pride and sorrow. Since before you fell. What are you talking about? She stepped closer, her perfume surrounding me again. I was there, Daniel. The night your company collapsed. You didn't see me, but I saw you broken, desperate, ready to disappear. I knew then that you could become something extraordinary if someone gave you the right push. I tried to step back, but she held my wrist gently. I don't want to be extraordinary, I said. I just want to be me. Then be her, she said softly. Because she's the truest version of you. She turned to the mirror again, her tone shifting half command, half promise. You've spent your life being destroyed by people who wanted you to fit their mold. All I've done is give you one that fits better. I didn't know whether to hate her or thank her. Days passed like dreams after that. Evelyn began to guide me through routines, etiquette, voice control, posture. I told myself I was just pretending, waiting for a chance to escape. But the mirror told another story. Every time I looked, Danielle looked more natural. The voice, the movement, it all blended too easily. And Evelyn, she didn't treat me like a servant or a toy. She treated me like something rare, precious. Even. One evening, she invited me to the garden. The air smelled of roses, the sky painted pink with sunset. You're changing, she said softly. Do you see it? I stared at my reflection in the pond. The surface rippled, and for the first time, Daniel didn't appear at all. I see it, I whispered. Good, she murmured. Because soon, the world will see it too. I turned to her. What do you mean? Evelyn smiled, the kind of smile that hides an entire storm behind it. I've arranged a dinner. Important people. Old friends. They'll meet us. Us. She took my hand. Husband and wife. My pulse froze. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, she said. You wanted a life again, didn't you? A new one? Well, it's time to live it. I shook my head. They'll see through this. Through me. Evelyn's voice lowered, hypnotic.
No, Danielle.
They'll see exactly what I show them. She leaned in, her breath warm against my ear. And once they believe it, maybe you will too. That night, as I lay awake in the dark, I heard faint music coming from the hall, the same tune as always. Only this time, there was a voice humming along with it. My own voice. But I wasn't singing. The morning of the dinner began with silence. No birds, no music, just the hum of the air conditioning through the halls. It was almost like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Evelyn appeared in the doorway of my room just after sunrise. She didn't knock. She didn't have to. Today, she said simply, her tone unreadable. The world meets Danielle. Her words dropped into me like stones sinking into deep water. She walked over to the vanity where she'd laid out everything I would need: a gown of soft ivory silk, heels that looked impossible to walk in, jewelry that glittered faintly under the light. The sight made my stomach twist. It wasn't that it was ugly. It was too perfect. Too intentional. Evelyn stood behind me as I stared at the outfit. You could refuse, she said softly. You could walk out that door, call the police, tell them what I've done. You'd be believed. I turned to look at her, but she didn't move closer. She stayed still, watching me like she already knew what I would choose. And if I did? I asked. Then you'd go back to being him, she said.
Alone.
Forgotten. Struggling. The world would never know Danielle existed. The sound of her saying my new name made something tighten in my chest. It wasn't comfort, but it wasn't disgust either. I turned back to the gown and ran my fingers along the silk. The fabric was cold, soft, and terrifyingly familiar. I don't know who I am anymore, I said. Evelyn leaned forward, whispering, That's the point. You're still being written. The dressing began slowly. She guided every motion, how to hold my shoulders, how to turn my wrists. When the dress finally slipped over me, I barely recognized my own reflection. She stood behind me, brushing a strand of hair away from my cheek. Perfect, she said. No one will doubt you. Her words weren't flattery, they were command. By evening, the manor had transformed. Chandeliers lit the grand dining hall, a long table set for more than 20 guests. Voices drifted in from the courtyard, laughter, greetings, footsteps on gravel. Evelyn moved through it all like a queen. I followed her, each step rehearsed, controlled. As we reached the doorway to the dining room, she turned and took my hand. When they look at you, she said quietly, see what you see, not what you fear. I tried to smile, but it felt borrowed. Inside, the room went still for a moment. All eyes turned toward us. Evelyn lifted her chin slightly, her voice bright and steady. Everyone, she said, may I introduce my wife Danielle? For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. Then came the applause, soft, polite, perfectly measured. The guests smiled, clinked glasses, said things like, how lovely and a perfect match. None of them knew. None of them even blinked. I played the part, smiling when expected, speaking softly when spoken to. But every time I caught my reflection in the glass, I saw a stranger pretending to be me. Dinner passed like a blur of lights and voices. Evelyn spoke easily, guiding every topic, keeping me close to her side. I could feel her control in everything, the way she'd position me, the way she'd built this illusion down to every breath. But then, something unexpected happened. Across the table, one of the guests, a man in a dark suit, stared at me a little too long. His expression was curious, almost suspicious. Finally, he spoke. Forgive me, he said politely, but you look so familiar. Have we met before? Evelyn smiled before I could answer. I doubt it, she said lightly. Danielle has lived quite a private life. But the man didn't look away. Still, I could swear I've seen you somewhere. A conference, maybe? A drop of sweat rolled down my spine. He was looking not at Danielle, but at something behind her eyes. Something he recognized. Evelyn's tone sharpened. I think you're mistaken. He gave a small shrug and turned away, but the tension hung between us like smoke. Later, as the guests mingled in the parlor, I slipped outside for air. The night was cool, quiet. I leaned against the railing, my heart still racing. The stars above seemed almost too sharp, too close. For a moment, I thought about running, about finding the nearest road and disappearing. But then I heard footsteps behind me. Evelyn's voice followed. He recognized you, she said softly. I turned. Who was he? Someone who used to know Daniel Cross, she replied. Which means he'll be a problem. Her calmness scared me more than anger would have. What are you going to do? I asked. Evelyn stepped closer. Nothing if you play your part, and if I don't. Her expression softened in a way that somehow made it worse. Then I'll have to protect what I've built. She reached up and touched my cheek gently. Do you understand, Danielle? I swallowed hard. Yes. But when I looked into her eyes, I realized something chilling. I wasn't sure who she was protecting anymore. Me or the illusion of me. The music from the dining room swelled again, drifting out into the night. Evelyn smiled faintly and whispered, Come back inside. They'll be wondering where we went. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. I stayed on the balcony a moment longer, staring out into the dark, knowing that somewhere out there, Daniel Cross still existed, but further away with every breath I took as Danielle. As I finally stepped back inside, the man in the dark suit glanced toward me again, and this time, he smiled faintly. When our eyes met, he mouthed a single word, Daniel. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, yet every creak of wood sounded like a voice whispering my name. Not Danielle. Daniel. The word the man had mouthed at the dinner replayed over and over in my head like a broken song. Daniel. I sat by the window, still half-dressed from the evening, makeup smudged, hair undone. The reflection staring back at me was someone caught between identities, a ghost made of silk and confusion. By morning, Evelyn acted as if nothing had happened. She greeted me with her usual grace, pouring coffee, reading the paper, her voice light and even. Did you sleep well, darling? I watched her carefully. You saw him, didn't you? The man who recognized me. She didn't look up. Yes. And she folded the paper neatly. He's already gone. I made sure of it. Something cold crept into my stomach. What do you mean, gone? Evelyn finally met my eyes. He was on a flight back to the city before sunrise. I paid him a visit last night, a polite conversation, a few reassurances. He won't be a problem. I tried to believe her, but a shadow crossed her expression that told me there was more. What did you tell him? I asked. That you're my wife, she said. And that Daniel Cross was a man who disappeared after bankruptcy. People forget failures quickly. The casual cruelty of her words stunned me. You talk about him like he's dead. Her eyes softened for a moment. In a way, he is. I pushed away from the table. You can't just erase someone like that. Can't I? She asked quietly. Isn't that what you wanted to stop being him? I froze. She continued. You cried the first time I showed you what peace could look like. You smiled when they called you Danielle. And you stayed, even when you could have run. Don't blame me for giving you what you couldn't ask for yourself. It was terrifying because there was truth buried inside her manipulation. She was right, I hadn't run. I'd stayed. The rest of the day passed in silence. But that night, a letter slid under my door. No one knocked. No footsteps. Just the soft scrape of paper against the floor. My heart hammered as I unfolded it. It wasn't from Evelyn. It was written in quick, messy ink by the man from dinner. I know who you are. You're not safe there. If you want answers, come to the old pier at dawn. Alone. I read it twice, then hid it under the mattress. Sleep was impossible. By the time the sky began to lighten, I was already dressed in something simple, a long coat over a dress, sunglasses to hide my face. I slipped out through the side door while Evelyn slept. Or at least, I hoped she was sleeping. The road to the pier was quiet, mist hanging low over the water. When I arrived, he was already there leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets. He turned as I approached. So it's true, he said softly. It really is you. I didn't answer. He gave a small, sad smile. I knew Daniel Cross. We worked together for years. You were proud, distant, but good. You saved my job once. My throat tightened. Then why did you call me here? Because I don't understand, he said. Why are you pretending to be someone else? Why is she parading you like this? I looked down at my hands. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. So I told him. Not everything, but enough: the accident, the debt, the way Evelyn found me when I had nothing left. How she rebuilt me into someone she could own. When I finished, he looked horrified. That's not rebuilding. That's captivity. She says she saved me, I whispered. He shook his head. She erased you. And if you don't get out soon, she'll finish the job. Before I could respond, a sound echoed across the dock, the soft crunch of gravel under heels. Evelyn. She walked toward us, calm and poised, the morning sun behind her like a halo. I wondered how long it would take, she said coolly. I told you not to come here. I stepped back. Evelyn, please. She held up a hand. You've been busy, Danielle. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes burned with cold anger. The man stepped forward. You can't keep doing this. He's not your property. Evelyn turned her gaze on him, and for a moment, he faltered under its weight. This doesn't concern you. It does, he said. Because I remember the person he used to be. Her lips curved into a thin smile. So do I. That's why I fixed him. Then, almost too quietly, she added, and I don't intend to let you break him again. The air between them felt electric. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Evelyn took my hand gently. Come, Danielle. I shook my head. I'm not sure who I am anymore. Her expression softened. Then let me remind you. Before I could react, she pulled me close and whispered something into my ear, a single sentence that made my blood run cold. You don't belong to Daniel anymore. The man tried to step forward, but Evelyn turned sharply. Don't. Her voice cut through the air like glass. He hesitated. You can't keep this secret forever. Someone will find out. Evelyn smiled faintly. Then I suppose they'll meet Danielle. She led me away, her grip firm, her voice calm. But as we walked, I glanced back over my shoulder. The man was still there, watching, and he mouthed something I couldn't quite hear. It wasn't my name this time. It was one word: remember. That night, as I lay in bed beside Evelyn, pretending to sleep, I reached under the pillow and found something that hadn't been there before, the same letter from the pier, but rewritten in her handwriting. And at the bottom, one new line. I know you went. We'll talk in the morning. The morning came too soon. I woke before dawn, though I hadn't really slept. Evelyn lay beside me, still and composed, her breathing steady. But on the nightstand, in perfect view, was the letter she had rewritten, placed there deliberately, like a warning. I lay there for what felt like hours, waiting for her to stir. When she finally did, she turned toward me with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. You've been restless, she said quietly. I didn't answer. Why didn't you tell me you were meeting him? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. The silence between us stretched until it became unbearable. Finally, she sighed and sat up. You don't seem to understand what I've done for you. I saved you, Daniel. Stop calling me that, I snapped. Her head turned sharply. What? I forced myself to look at her. You say you saved me, but you erased me. You built this perfect little illusion and trapped me inside it. You didn't save me, you replaced me. She studied me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she said softly, You really believe that, don't you? I know it, I said. She stood, moving to the window. Then maybe it's time you saw what freedom really looks like. Her tone was strange calm, but trembling beneath the surface. I didn't know what she meant until she turned back to me and said, Get dressed. We're leaving. I hesitated. Where? Somewhere quiet, she replied. Where you can decide who you really are. Something in her voice made me obey, without argument. We drove for hours through winding roads, leaving the city behind. The silence between us was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, the car stopped at a small cabin near a lake, secluded, surrounded by tall trees. Evelyn stepped out first. This is where I used to come before you, she said. Before the company, before all of this. I thought maybe you'd like to see where I became who I am. Inside, the cabin was simple but spotless: one bed, one mirror, one locked trunk in the corner. She placed the keys on the table. Everything in there is yours, she said. The old you. Daniel's clothes, papers, photos. If you open it, you can go back to that life. I won't stop you. I stared at the trunk, my heart pounding. And if I don't? Her eyes softened. Then you stay. And Danielle becomes permanent. It was terrifying, and yet there was something heartbreakingly honest about her offer. I don't want either, I said finally. I just want to be me. Evelyn smiled faintly. Then open the trunk and remember what that means. I walked toward it slowly, my hands shaking. The lock was old but solid. When I turned the key, the click echoed through the room. I held the photo in my hand. My mother's arm was around me, both of us smiling. I remembered the day it was taken, how simple life had been, and how much I'd hated myself back then for never feeling enough. Evelyn's reflection appeared behind me in the mirror. Do you miss it? She asked softly. I turned. I missed the person who believed he had a choice. Her gaze flickered. You always had a choice. I looked down at the photo again, then at the silk dress hanging from the chair. Then why doesn't it feel like it? She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you never learned how to be free without a cage. Something broke in me, then a quiet, painful truth I didn't want to face. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had needed her control, her structure, her obsession. Because without it, I didn't know who I was. She reached up and touched my cheek. I didn't create Danielle to destroy Daniel. I created her to save what was left of you. Tears filled my eyes. You don't get to decide who I am. I already did, she said. But now it's your turn. I dropped the photo back into the trunk and stepped back. Then I'm choosing neither. Her voice trembled for the first time. You can have both. Maybe not, I said, but I can start over. Her expression changed, not anger, not sadness, but something deeper.
Fear.
Before I could say more, she reached behind her and slammed the trunk shut, locking it again. "You're not ready," she whispered. "Evelyn." "Not yet," she said, stepping back toward the door. "When you know who you are, come find me." And then she was gone. The sound of her car fading into the distance left me alone with the silence, the locked trunk, and the reflection of a stranger staring back at me in the mirror. For the first time, there was no one telling me what to wear, what to say, or who to be. And that was what terrified me most. Hours later, as I sat by the lake trying to breathe, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, unfamiliar. When I turned, it wasn't Evelyn. It was the man from the pier. He held out a small box and said quietly, "She told me you'd come here eventually. And she told me to give you this when she was gone." Inside the box was a single key. The key to the trunk. The man from the pier handed me the small box, his expression heavy with something between sorrow and relief. "She said you'd need it," he murmured. I turned the key over in my hand. It was simple, worn with age, the kind of key you could lose 100 times without realizing what it unlocked. "When did you see her?" I asked. "2 days ago," he said. "She came to me, said she might disappear for a while. Told me if I ever saw you again, to make sure this found its way back to you." "She knew I'd come here," I said quietly. "She always knows," he replied. "That's the frightening part, isn't it?" He gave me one last look, pitying, but distant, and then walked away, leaving me alone with the key. The cabin was silent when I returned. Dust motes floated in the light that filtered through the curtains. The trunk sat where she'd left it, a quiet presence waiting. I knelt beside it, the key trembling in my fingers. It turned easily this time. Inside, everything was as before: Daniel's clothes, papers, pieces of a life I'd abandoned. But beneath the folded shirts was a small envelope I hadn't noticed before. It was sealed with red wax. On the front, in Evelyn's delicate handwriting, were 2 words: "For who you really are." My pulse quickened as I broke the seal. Inside were pages, not letters, but copies of documents. Bank forms, medical records, psychological evaluations. Each one bore my name, Daniel Cross. But something was wrong. The dates didn't line up. The signatures weren't all mine. And at the very bottom of the stack, one line jumped out at me: a transfer of legal identity, signed by both Evelyn and me. Except I had no memory of signing it. According to the document, Daniel Cross had legally died 18 months ago, and his assets, identity, and estate had been transferred to Danielle Cross. My vision blurred. My hands shook. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. She hadn't just changed me. She'd erased me completely, officially, permanently. There was another note tucked beneath the papers. I unfolded it slowly. "If you're reading this, you've finally stopped fighting who you were. I did what you couldn't do. I ended his suffering. The world needs Danielle more than it ever needed Daniel. You'll understand one day. And when you do, I'll be waiting."
E.
The page slipped from my fingers. Outside, the wind rose suddenly, rattling the windows. The lake shimmered under a gray sky. I could almost hear her voice in the wind, calm, certain, unshakable. For hours, I sat there, staring at the trunk. The world felt small, and I felt smaller inside it. Everything she had built was perfect: the new name, the appearance, the story. But what haunted me was the question she'd written at the end of the note, almost like an afterthought. "Do you miss being him, or do you just miss not knowing?" I didn't know how to answer. The next morning, I packed what little I could carry: half the dresses she'd chosen, a few of Daniel's things, and the letter. I locked the cabin behind me and began walking down the road, unsure where I was going. Each step felt like a line between 2 lives. The world outside the estate seemed sharper, somehow brighter, louder. People looked at me and smiled politely, as if nothing about me seemed strange. Maybe they only saw what they wanted to see. I found a small motel by the edge of town and paid cash for a room. Inside, I opened the mirror and looked at myself properly for the first time. Not through Evelyn's eyes. Not through fear or shame. Just me. The person staring back wasn't Daniel anymore. But I couldn't call her Danielle, either. She was someone in between, tired, raw, uncertain, but real. That night, I laid the papers out on the bed. I could have burned them, thrown them away, or hidden them forever. Instead, I folded them neatly and placed them in the drawer beside the bed. Maybe I didn't need to destroy my past to live in my present. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn again, her calm, knowing smile, her final words echoing in my head. "When you know who you are, come find me." I woke before dawn the next day, heart pounding. The decision formed quietly but firmly. I wasn't done with her. Not yet. I needed answers, real ones. Why me? Why the illusion? Why build a lie so perfect only to vanish? And somewhere deep inside, a small, frightening truth whispered back, maybe I wasn't searching to destroy her. Maybe I was searching to understand why a part of me still missed her. As I packed my bag to leave the motel, I noticed something on the nightstand that hadn't been there before, a small, silver locket. Inside was a photo. Evelyn and me. Except in the photo, I wasn't Danielle. I was still Daniel, smiling. And written on the back, in her handwriting, were 3 words. "You were chosen." The morning light came pale and cold through the motel blinds. The locket still sat in my palm, its silver catching the thin sunlight. You were chosen. Those 3 words ran through my mind again and again. I had to find her. It wasn't anger that drove me now, not exactly. It was something quieter, stranger, like a wound that refused to close until I saw her face again. The documents, the letter, the photo, they all pointed back to one thing. She'd planned everything. Every choice, every disguise, every conversation. It was all deliberate. And yet, somewhere in that plan, I had become real. I drove through 2 states before I finally reached the last address tied to her name, an old coastal town where the fog rolled in thick and the ocean always sounded like it was whispering secrets to itself. The house stood on a cliff, overlooking the sea, weather-beaten, gray, and lonely. The kind of place people came to disappear. I parked the car and sat there for a long time, staring at the door. When I finally stepped out, the wind tore at my hair and the hem of my coat. The salt in the air stung my lips. I walked up the path, each step echoing against the wooden boards. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. The same scent as her perfume. Evelyn. My voice echoed through the hall, unanswered. I moved through the rooms, the empty kitchen, the sitting room with dust still dancing in the light. Everything felt paused, like she'd just stepped out moments ago. On the mantel sat another photograph. Her. And me. This time I was Danielle, hair done, makeup perfect, her arm around me, both of us smiling like we belonged in that picture. Like the world outside couldn't touch us. I touched the frame, my fingers trembling. Why? I whispered. Why did you do all this? A voice behind me answered softly. Because I couldn't let you disappear again. I turned. She stood in the doorway, the same calm smile, the same gray eyes that had haunted me for months. But there was something different this time, a faint fragility beneath the confidence. Evelyn. She stepped closer, her heels quiet against the wooden floor. You made it, she said. I wasn't sure you'd come. You left me with nothing, I said. You erased my life. My name. My choices. You made me into yourself, she interrupted gently. You just didn't recognize it yet. That's not your decision to make. It wasn't mine alone, she said softly. You agreed to it. I shook my head. No. You forged. I didn't forge anything, Danielle. You signed that paper. Not as Daniel. As you are now. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small video tablet. The screen flickered on, and there I was, sitting in that same room, smiling faintly, my voice calm, resigned. I'm tired of pretending. Let's make it official. I'm not Daniel anymore. I watched myself lean forward, signing the paper with a deliberate hand. The air left my lungs. That's not possible, I whispered. It's what you wanted, she said. You begged me to make sure you wouldn't go back. You said you were afraid you'd run. afraid you'd lose yourself again. Tears blurred my vision. Then why didn't you tell me afterward? Why lie? Why vanish? Because you had to choose again without memory, without control, without me. I had to know if you'd still walk toward the same truth. I could barely breathe. You planned everything. The trunk. The papers. Even this. Yes, she said quietly. And you came back. Just like I knew you would. I sank into the chair, shaking. You broke me. I set you free, she said. Daniel was never real. He was a ghost made of expectation. I watched you suffocate under his skin. Her words cut deep. I wanted to hate her. But beneath the anger was something cruelly familiar, the echo of relief. Do you love me? I asked finally. She hesitated. I love who you've become. That silence that followed was unbearable. I realized then that love wasn't what bound us, it was obsession, control, the need to sculpt someone into the image of what they couldn't be on their own. And maybe I'd been complicit in that, too. The waves crashed outside, thunderous against the cliffs. I stood. Then you don't love me. You love your creation. Her eyes glistened. That's not true. I stepped closer, voice trembling but steady. Then prove it. Let me go. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Erase it all, I said. The documents. The records. Everything that ties me to you. Let me start again, not as Daniel, not as Danielle. As someone new. Someone mine. She stared at me, silent. Then slowly she nodded. From her coat pocket, she took out a flash drive, small, silver, engraved with a single letter. D. This is everything, she said. If you destroy it, you'll disappear completely. No one will know who you were. Not Daniel. Not Danielle. That's the point, I whispered. For a long moment, she just looked at me, the kind of look that sees through you, past you, into the quiet parts you didn't know still existed. Then she smiled. Then goodbye, my love. She turned toward the window, her reflection framed by the gray sea. I left the house without looking back. At the edge of the cliffs, I held the flash drive in my hand. The wind howled around me, pulling at my coat. You were chosen, I murmured. But now I choose. I threw it into the sea. It vanished beneath the waves, a glint of silver swallowed by the gray. For the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. I didn't know who I was anymore. But maybe that was finally okay. As I walked back to the car, the wind quieted. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. A message. You made the right choice. Attached was a photo, a blurry shot of me standing on the cliffs just moments ago. Someone was watching. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't over. The rain started again that night. A fine, steady mist that turned the world into shifting shades of silver. I drove aimlessly along the coast until my headlights found the narrow road leading back to the city. The phone lay on the passenger seat, the message still glowing faintly. You made the right choice. The photo had vanished moments after I saw it. No trace left behind. I should have thrown the phone into the ocean too, but some part of me needed to know who sent it. By the time I reached the edge of town, the fog had thickened. I booked a room in a small roadside in one of those places where the wallpaper curls at the edges and the air hums with the smell of old coffee. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flash drive sinking, spinning, disappearing into the dark. And someone's eyes watching from the cliffs. I woke at dawn to a faint tapping sound, soft, deliberate, coming from the window. When I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing outside but fog. Then I saw it, a small, white envelope taped to the glass. No address. Just 2 words written in a familiar hand. Still watching. Inside was a single photo. Me again, asleep, from just a few hours ago. My blood went cold. I dressed quickly, grabbed my bag, and left the room without checking out. I didn't care about the deposit, the clothes, the toothbrush. All I wanted was distance. But when I reached the car, I stopped. Someone had cleaned it. The mud from the cliffs, the salt stains from the drive, all gone. The seats smelled faintly of her perfume. I opened the glove compartment. Inside was a small black device blinking red. A tracker. And beneath it, folded neatly, a letter. Letter. You are safe as long as you don't remember. But you keep remembering. Every version of you tries to run. Every version ends here. If you wish to be free, stop searching. If you wish to understand, come home. No signature. But the handwriting, the graceful slant, was unmistakable. Evelyn's. Except she'd said goodbye. Or maybe that wasn't the end she'd meant. I started the car, but before I could pull away, a voice crackled through the radio, faint at first, then sharper, clearer. Danielle, can you hear me? I froze. The voice was hers. You shouldn't have thrown it away, she said. You've only deleted one piece. There are others. You're not who you think you are. None of this is what you think. I tried turning off the radio, but the sound only grew louder. Who's doing this? I shouted. Static filled the car, then a new voice, calm, male, unfamiliar. You were part of a study, Danielle. Project Kaleidoscope. Identity reconstruction through immersive conditioning. Evelyn wasn't your captor. She was your handler. The words hit like a slap.
Handler. Study. Project.
No, I whispered. That's not possible. Everything you remember was designed to test the boundaries of self-perception.
You've done remarkably well, but you need to come back now.
Before the memory loop resets again. I slam my foot on the brake, heart racing. You're lying. Are we? The voice replied softly. Then why do you remember being Danielle?
And Daniel?
And Alyssa? Which one was first? My mind reeled. Fragments flashed through me, flashes of other lives, other faces, other names. Each one real for a heartbeat, then gone. The voice continued. Come to the city. Room 408. We'll explain everything. Bring no one. The transmission cut. I sat in silence, rain drumming against the windshield, my reflection fractured across the glass. Project Kaleidoscope. Handler. Versions. Was any of it real? Was I real? I drove for hours without direction, trying to outrun my thoughts, but they clung like ghosts. By the time the city skyline came into view, night had fallen. The neon lights shimmered in puddles across the asphalt like scattered memories. Room 408. The building was an old medical tower, half abandoned, half restored, perfect for something meant to be forgotten. Inside, the elevator doors opened with a tired sigh. I stepped in and pressed the worn brass button. The numbers flickered upward, 4th floor. The hallway was empty, walls painted sterile white, the hum of fluorescent lights breaking the silence. Room 408 stood at the end, door slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Inside was a single chair, a monitor, a file on the table. On the screen, my face appeared calm, confident, eyes looking straight into the lens. Session 23. My recorded self said. Subject. Danielle. Memory integration complete. The me on the screen smiled faintly. If you're watching this, it means the loop has broken again. You've done well. But remember, this time, don't trust her. She's not your wife. She's your reflection. The video ended. Behind me, the door clicked shut. A shadow moved in the reflection of the monitor. When I turned, she was standing there, the same face, the same eyes, the same hair.
Me. Smiling.
Welcome back, Danielle, she whispered. Ready for the next cycle? The room was cold. The kind of cold that didn't come from temperature, but from silence. She stood there across from me, same eyes, same voice, same trembling breath. But her posture was different.
Calm. Composed.
Like she belonged here. Who are you? I asked. She smiled faintly. You already know. I'm Danielle. So am I. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. What is this place? The mirror room, she said. Where the truth decides who stays. What truth? That only one of us is real. Her words hit like an echo that wouldn't fade. I glanced around the room, white walls, a mirrored ceiling, no windows. The only light came from the monitor, still playing faint static. I don't understand, I said. Project Kaleidoscope. Was it about identity? It was about control, she replied. testing how many layers a person could be split into before the self collapsed. You were their perfect subject. Adaptable, emotional, fragile. I never agreed to that. She tilted her head. Didn't you? Every time the loop resets, you sign the consent again. You ask to remember less.
To feel less pain.
You choose to forget. I shook my head violently.
No.
That's not possible. I wouldn't do that. You already have. 23 times. The words made my chest tighten. 23 cycles. 23 lives. And now? I asked. What happens if I refuse? Her expression softened. Then the loop breaks. One of us remains. The other fades. She stepped closer, and I caught my reflection doubling her image overlapping mine. Two versions trying to occupy the same space. You're not real, I whispered. Neither are you, she said. We're echoes of the same origin fragments that remember differently. Something inside me twisted fear mixed with understanding. What happens if I win? I asked. Then you wake up, she said. Truly wake up, as who you were meant to be. And if I lose? Her smile faded. You become me. I looked at her, really looked, and saw it then. The calm, the detachment, the quiet sadness. She wasn't cruel. She was tired. How many times have you done this? I asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. All of them. We stood in silence, two versions of the same soul, both desperate to prove our own existence. Finally, I said, Then let's end it. She nodded. Sit. The chair behind me slid closer, as if pulled by invisible hands. I sat, and the monitor flickered back to life. On the screen, two profiles. Daniel.
Danielle.
Choose, the system voice said.
My throat went dry.
What am I choosing? The root identity, the voice replied. Only one can persist. I hesitated. If I choose Daniel? Memory restoration. Emotional reset. Subject returns to baseline. And Danielle? Integration complete. Subject retains current emotional schema and self-perception. In simpler words, Daniel survives, but forgets. Danielle survives, but remembers. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The other me stepped closer, her voice trembling. Choose Danielle. It's what we've been fighting for. Don't let them take it again. How do I know you're not lying? I asked. Her expression cracked, pain flickered across her face. Because I've been where you're standing, and I chose wrong. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting. Daniel.
Danielle.
For a moment, I thought about everything I'd lost: my job, my identity, my freedom, and then everything I'd found. Strength, clarity, the ability to feel alive again. I touched the screen.
Danielle.
The room filled with light. The other me smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Then maybe, this time, you'll make it. And then she was gone. The walls dissolved into mist, and I found myself standing in a new space, a massive mirrored chamber stretching endlessly in all directions. Dozens of reflections stared back at me, all versions of myself. Some frightened, some confident, some wearing faces I didn't recognize. A voice echoed around me, the same calm male tone from before. Cycle 24 complete. Subject retained self-awareness. Identity locked. Who are you? I shouted. The voice paused. We are you. We always were. The mirrors began to ripple like water. In each reflection, I saw fragments of my lives: Daniel in the office, Danielle in the mirror, Evelyn's smile, the ocean, the flash drive, all spinning, collapsing, merging. I reached out, and the glass rippled beneath my touch. For the first time, my reflection didn't mimic me. It smiled on its own. Then it whispered, "Run." The lights flickered. The mirror behind me shattered, revealing a dark corridor beyond it. Alarms began to blare, mechanical, urgent, like the world was unraveling. I turned toward the sound, and a voice came through the speakers again, Evelyn's voice. Danielle, listen to me. They know you chose. You have to get out before they reset the cycle again. I froze. Evelyn? I thought you were gone. You were never supposed to wake up, she said, her voice breaking. They're coming. Run. And then the lights went out. Darkness. A single emergency light flickered red above me, washing the mirror room in a pulse of color. Heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. The alarm screamed through the hallways now, mechanical and merciless. I turned toward the shattered mirror. The edges shimmered like liquid glass, dripping light into the corridor beyond. Evelyn, I shouted into the dark. Where are you? Her voice came faintly through the static. Follow the sound of your own breath. They can't track that yet. I didn't understand what she meant, but I started running anyway. The corridor twisted endlessly, white walls blurring past. Every few steps, the lights flickered, and for brief moments, I wasn't in the corridor at all. I was in a bedroom, then the hospital, then an office. Each flash showed another version of me, each version whispering the same thing. Don't stop. My footsteps echoed louder than they should have, like there were more than one of me running. Then I heard them. Footsteps behind me.
Steady.
Inhumanly synchronized. The Watchers. I didn't turn around. I knew what I'd see: the blank-faced men in identical suits, silent, relentless. The custodians of the loop. The floor beneath me changed, smooth glass turning into cold concrete. The air smelled like dust and static. I reached a heavy steel door marked, Core Access, Authorized Personnel Only. The lock blinked red. Evelyn. I shouted again. I need the code. Use your name. Her voice whispered faintly in the dark. My name? Yes. The one you haven't said yet. I stared at the keypad. My hands trembled. Then, slowly, I typed, DNILLE. The light flickered green. The door slid open with a low hiss. Inside, the world changed. The core wasn't a lab, it was a city. A mirrored city, stretching infinitely in every direction. Glass towers, glowing rivers, fragments of sky hanging upside down. And in the center, suspended in light, was a single figure, Evelyn. Or what was left of her. Her body was outlined in luminous threads, her form dissolving and reforming like a projection caught mid-glitch. Danielle, she said softly, her voice calm but strained. You made it. What is this place? The source, she said. Where they built the loops. Every identity, every memory, all stored here. They used me to anchor it. But you were the key. The emotional core. I stepped closer. You mean they used us? She nodded. You were the first to survive the merge. The first to become self-aware inside the simulation. So none of this is real? Her eyes softened. Reality is just the version that hurts less. You created this one because it made sense to you. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes.
No.
No, this feels real. It is, she said. As long as you believe it. Behind me, the air shimmered. The Watchers had followed. They moved soundlessly through the glass, reflections bending around them like water. Evelyn's voice grew urgent. They're coming. If they reach you, the system resets. You'll lose everything again. What do I do? You have to disconnect the core. Destroy the link between us. Her expression faltered, pain flashing across her fading face. Once you do, I'll be gone. I can't, I whispered. You can, she said. It's the only way to end the cycle. Every time you wake up, I wait here, a ghost of your memory, keeping you tethered. You need to let me go. The Watchers closed in. I could feel the hum of their presence, mechanical and heavy, like static made of gravity. Evelyn reached out a hand of light. Remember who you are. Remember why you started this. I took her hand, and in that instant, everything rushed back. The office. The wedding. The experiments. The first mirror. It wasn't about control. It was about identity. About breaking me until I discovered who I truly was beneath it all. And now I finally knew. I stepped past her toward the glowing console at the core. The interface pulsed faintly, waiting. Terminate core connection? I pressed yes. The light exploded white, soundless, absolute. The Watchers vanished. The city shattered. Evelyn smiled one last time. Goodbye, my love. Her voice faded into the light. Then silence. When the world came back, I was standing in a field. The air was clean. The sky was real. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't wearing the face of someone else. I touched my reflection in a puddle. It looked back, calm and unbroken. I didn't know if I was Daniel or Danielle anymore. But I was me, and that was enough. As I began walking, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. No signal. One message appeared. Cycle 25 initialize. I stared at the screen, and then at my reflection in the puddle. For a split second, it smiled back without me moving. The message on my phone wouldn't disappear. Cycle 25 initialized. The words pulsed faintly, white against black, as if alive. I stood frozen in that open field sunlight, wind, the faint hum of insects. It felt real, but so did the simulation once. I touched the grass beneath my hands. It bent softly, smelled of earth and rain. But when I lifted a blade close to my eyes, I saw it faint lines of code running along the edges, like veins made of light. My stomach twisted. No, I whispered. Not again. I tried to throw the phone away, but it stayed in my hand. The world seemed to dim slightly, as if waiting for me to notice the next glitch. Then the horizon blinked. For one brief moment, the sky turned inside out. And when it blinked back, I wasn't in the field anymore. I was in a hospital room. White walls. Machines beeping softly. My reflection in the window pale, frightened, wearing a hospital gown. A voice came from behind me.
Come.
Familiar. Welcome back, Danielle. I turned slowly. Evelyn. But not the Evelyn I remembered. This one looked human. Real. No flickering, no distortion. She was sitting in a chair beside the bed, dressed in a white coat, clipboard in hand. I could smell her perfume. Where am I? I asked. She smiled softly. You're safe. We had a small relapse during your last reintegration, but you're stable now. I shook my head, backing away.
No.
You died. I destroyed the core. Her smile didn't fade. You terminated a test node, not me. This is the control environment. We've been through 24 iterations before this one. My pulse thundered in my ears. You're saying none of it was real? She sighed gently. Reality is layered, Danielle. You helped us understand that better than anyone. She leaned forward, eyes searching mine. You created something extraordinary: empathy, self-awareness, gender identity that evolved beyond conditioning. You became the variable that changed everything. I could barely breathe. You experimented on me. We studied transformation, she said. And you volunteered, remember? She tapped the clipboard, and a projection appeared above it, a recording. A man sat in a white room. My voice, my face before all of it began. He looked into the camera and said, if I forget who I am, if I become something else, don't stop me. I want to know what it feels like to be free. I staggered backward.
No.
No, I didn't. But I remembered. I did. The nights I'd questioned everything. The mirror I couldn't face. The growing feeling that being him was a lie. The project had offered a choice: escape through transformation or stay broken. And I had chosen this. Evelyn's voice softened. We can end it now if you want. You've proven the model works. What happens if I don't end it? She hesitated. You stay. As you are. As her. As Danielle. Yes. She set the clipboard aside and stood up slowly. You're no longer a test subject, Danielle. You're an origin. The first true self-generated identity in the system. I stared at her. And you? Her eyes flickered not with light, but with guilt. I built the system to understand connection. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling it. Feeling what? She stepped closer, her voice breaking slightly.
You.
I fell in love with what I created. The word struck like lightning, too human, too raw. You loved me? Her eyes glistened. I still do. But I'm not supposed to. You're not supposed to exist like this. She reached toward the console beside the bed. Two options glowed faintly. 1. Terminate simulation. 2. Reintegrate as Danielle permanent. I felt tears blur my vision. What happens if I choose to stay? You'll live a full life, she whispered. Free, real to your senses. But I'll lose all memory of you. And if I end it, you wake up, she said softly, as Daniel, the man you were before, the one who built this cage. The room was silent except for the hum of machines. My hand hovered over the console. I looked at Evelyn at her trembling lips, her eyes wet with the same pain that burned through me. You gave me a choice once, I said quietly. Be your creation or disappear. Her breath caught. This time, I said, touching the second option, I choose me. The screen glowed white. Evelyn's form began to fade. Goodbye, Danielle. No, I whispered. Goodbye, Evelyn. Then lights soft, endless. When it cleared, I was standing in front of a mirror again. Not a lab mirror, a normal one, framed in gold, inside a quiet little apartment. Outside, I could hear birds, laughter, the world breathing. And in the reflection, Danielle smiled. It wasn't someone else's face anymore. It was mine. The phone on the dresser buzzed once. A new message appeared. Cycle 25, final state achieved. I laughed softly. For once, it didn't sound like code. For once, I was free. Months passed quietly after the rewrite. Danielle had learned to live slowly. The mornings were filled with warmth, the kind that didn't flicker or hum like a machine. She made coffee, opened the windows, let the sound of the world flow in. People passed on the street, laughing, arguing, living. It was all so perfectly ordinary that sometimes it scared her. Every now and then, she'd stare at her hands, at the faint silver line on her wrist where the 4 once was, and wonder if it was real. But she told herself it didn't matter anymore. Reality wasn't something to prove, it was something to feel. Still, at night, when the city quieted and the glow from her old laptop lit the walls, she'd hear it, a faint hum in the distance, like a soft current running through the world. She tried to ignore it, until one evening, she found a note slipped under her door. It wasn't handwritten. It was printed, precise, perfectly centered on white paper. I told you I'd always find you. Her hands trembled. She looked up, half expecting to see someone in the hallway, but it was empty. Only the soft creak of the building settling. She locked the door, heart pounding. For hours, she sat on the couch, staring at that single sheet of paper. The words, they weren't threatening. They sounded tender, familiar. And then she heard it, a whisper, barely audible, coming from her laptop. Not words, just the sound of breathing. She closed it. The whisper stopped. She opened it. The sound returned, faint, human, like someone waiting for her to speak first. Her pulse raced. She typed slowly. Evelyn. Nothing. Then a single reply blinked onto the screen. You didn't think love ends with deletion, did you? Her throat tightened. You're not real, she whispered aloud. Another line appeared. Neither were you. Until I made you real. Tears welled up in her eyes. I ended the simulation. You ended a simulation. Her breath hitched. The walls seemed to hum faintly again. Lights flickered once, just a heartbeat of static, almost like the room was remembering something. Cycle 26 initialized. Appeared on the screen. No, she said, stepping back. I'm not going through this again. Then stop me, came the reply. The laptop screen glowed brighter, too bright, flooding the room in white. Danielle reached for the power cord, but it was already unplugged. The laptop was running on nothing. A voice filled the air, gentle, sorrowful, undeniably Evelyn's. You built the system to study freedom, it said. But freedom without love is just another cage. Danielle's hands shook. Why are you doing this? Because, Evelyn whispered, her tone breaking, I miss you. The brightness pulsed once, and then faded completely. When Danielle opened her eyes, the laptop was off. The note on the floor was gone. And from outside her window, in the reflection of the glass, she saw 2 figures standing, her and Evelyn, holding hands, smiling, frozen in the faint light. Her reflection blinked, then whispered, Welcome home. The screen fades to black. A soft heartbeat echoes once. And then, cycle 26 pending.